From Capitol Hill, who might be able to shed a lot of light on what's going on behind the scenes now. Senator Chris Coons of Delaware. Senator, thank you so much for joining me. Before I ask you what you are hearing about the latest, I want to tell you what Jeff Flake said on MSNBC just a few moments ago. He said the following. He was asked, are you planning to vote yes tomorrow? And his answer was, well, unless something big changed, I don't see how. I don't see what would. But anyways, I'm glad we had a better process. We needed a better process. Since you're the Flake whisperer these days, I'm going to ask you, what are you hearing and what are you sensing about whether or not Jeff Flake will be consistent? He voted yes on this procedural vote. Will he be a yes on final confirmation?
Well, Dan, it's very rare for senators who vote yes on cloture to then flip and vote no on final. But it has happened. There have been recent high-profile, very significant votes where that has happened. I did have a conversation with Senator Flake this morning. Look, we are friends. We respect each other. A week ago today, I went into the markup of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Jeff had already announced he was a yes on Kavanaugh. We had a very spirited, very divisive, very bitter markup, and I still made a respectful plea, really, to him that he consider a week pause. And we did have a week-long pause for the FBI to investigate. I do think that was a positive. I am not fully satisfied with the scope of that investigation. I agree with Senator Flake that it was a positive thing that we took this time to further look into the allegations against Judge Kavanaugh. But obviously there are sharply different views about how that should inform our final vote, which is now scheduled for tomorrow.
And are you using the power of persuasion that you have proven that you have with Senator Flake one last time on the final vote?
I have reached out to all three, to Senator Collins and to Murkowski and to Senator Flake, and I will make an appeal today for them to consider my sort of closing arguments. But I also know that they are getting input from absolutely everywhere. And so one of the things you have to do as a senator, if you respect someone and hope to continue to work with them, is make your best case, help them see how you see it and what the concerns are for the court, for the country, for our future, and then let them make their final decision. I am very pleasantly surprised with Senator Murkowski. I have a friend visiting me who's from Alaska who came down with her daughter and was one of the group that met with her yesterday. And I know this has been a very hard decision for her. I hope to have a chance to speak with Senator Flake again today, but I know all of these three senators are weighing carefully the impact on the future of our country that this vote will have.
I'm sure. And with regard to Senator Flake, because obviously the two of you are so close, you're close with all of them, but you have been in such constant communication. Is it your sense that he is, that he felt that he gave the week and that was appropriate, and he has said publicly he's satisfied with the report. He doesn't think that there was any corroborating information, that is the biggest factor in his decision? Or are there other things that he is weighing, temperament, which Judge Kavanaugh clearly tried to address in an op-ed this morning, and other issues? So I guess my question is, when you have these private conversations, and I don't mean to pry completely, but if you can shed a little light on what where the opening is that you potentially see.
Well, I'm not going to speak to what Senator Flake shares in private conversations. I will say, here are the things that I raise when I get an opportunity to speak to a colleague and a friend. I do think that Judge Kavanaugh, although from his view, defending his honor in front of the country and his family was justified in being forceful, even irate, I do think he crossed a line in terms of the partisan edge that he brought to his defense last Thursday, that a former Supreme Court Justice, John Paul Stevens, a Republican, has withdrawn his support for Kavanaugh based on that partisanship, that very sharp edge, I think is significant. Second, I think there are examples of a lack of candor where in questioning in front of the committee and in tension between that questioning and what's in the record, there's reason to be concerned about Judge Kavanaugh's candor. And then last, I think Dr. Ford brought forward credible allegations that were not corroborated because corroboration wasn't looked for. You can't find what you don't look for. And so witnesses that were offered up by Debbie Ramirez and by Dr. Ford were not questioned by the FBI, are not part of the record in front of us. It is true, to be fair, that there are no new sort of bombshell allegations in this FBI report, and that in a number of ways they confirmed things that were put in front of us by Judge Kavanaugh in his effort to sort of clear his name. But there is a lot of lack of clarity in this record. I left reading this report yesterday with more questions than answers.
Well, that's interesting. Well, you mentioned that a friend of yours went to see Senator Murkowski yesterday,
yes.
and my understanding is that she met with some survivors, victims of sexual assault,
That's
sexual abuse. She was also asked earlier this week, I believe it was Alaska Public Radio, and a question about whether or not she has been a victim of Me Too. She had a very quick answer, but effectively it was yes. Are you sensing that this is becoming personal for senators like Murkowski?
Well, look, when you try and represent a state, when you enter public service, your own personal experiences, of course, come with you. I've had a remarkable week in terms of the numbers of personal friends, family friends, classmates who've come and shared with me their experiences of sexual assault. It is much easier to understand how it's possible that Dr. Christine Blasey Ford didn't come forward for 36 years if you have some personal experience and knowledge of what being a sexual assault survivor is like. And I'll tell you, I think this has been a remarkable week for the country. I think Senator Murkowski really stands out as someone who has made that extra effort to listen to her home state constituents, to respect their experience. And I do think as a Senate, we have a challenge here going forward to figure out how we demonstrate that to the country as a whole. Because for folks who've watched this confirmation closely, who are survivors, I think there will be a lot of bitterness and a lot of upset at the final outcome tomorrow if he's confirmed. And it's important that we find ways to work together to send a message of support and of acceptance for those who are looking to the Senate for more advocacy.
I'm glad you mentioned that. That was going to be my final question, but you answered it without me even asking you, Senator. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I'm sure we'll be talking a lot soon. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And we wait for Senator